Good morning to all, and welcome to the discussion for the future of food, sustainability and innovation. My name is Έφη Λαζαρίδου, and I'm the CEO of New Agriculture, New Generation, a non-profit organization based in Greece, established through a generous grant from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. Today, together with Rutgers University, we are content partners of the Delphi Economic Forum 2021. Bringing together three global thinkers and leaders in the area of agriculture and food. Sara Boettiger, Head of Global Public Affairs, Science and Sustainability at Bayer. Lou Cooperhouse, President and CEO of BlueNalu. And Roy Steiner, Senior Vice President at the Rockefeller Foundation's Food Initiative. I am confident that this will be a fascinating discussion. Food is the most critical parameter to optimize human health and environmental sustainability. However, food is currently posing an immense threat both to people and the planet. The tremendous challenge for humanity today is to provide a growing world population with healthy diets from sustainable food systems that operate within the planetary boundaries. To achieve negative emissions globally, as per the Paris Agreement, the global food system must become a net carbon sink from 2040 and onward. A radical transformation is needed now. I am inviting our esteemed speakers to share with us their insights and the strategies created by their organizations in that direction. And Sara, if I may start with you. The pandemic has really highlighted the importance of resilience in our food systems. At the same time, the UN Food Systems Summit is being convened due to the central role food systems play in achieving all of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. What needs to happen if we are to meet the challenges ahead? And how are the ag and food industries changing?
Big question. I'll give you a few thoughts. I think the first thing to note in answer to your question is that the challenges are really different now than they were before the pandemic. Our progress against the SDGs has been significantly compromised. We now have a lot of competing interests for scarce government resources. Remittances, something that many families in the world use to afford food, have been significantly disrupted. So I think part of it is that the context is really different. We're actually solving different challenges, or at least a different version of the same challenges in the food system that we had before. And it's not done changing. We'd like to talk about the post-pandemic or building back better, but we still have a long way to go, and the space is evolving. But then the other part of it, which is going on in parallel, is that the ag and food industries are really undergoing two big disruptions right now. One of them is a digital disruption, which has been a long time in coming, but I think is finally really taking root. And the other is a sustainability transformation, where the drivers of that part that you mentioned, operating within planetary boundaries, are really embedding in things that are driving companies. They're driving capital markets, they're driving consumers, they're driving financial institutions in ways that are creating an environment where at Bayer, the environmental considerations, the sustainability, the social impact are fully embedded in our commercial long-term growth plan. So it's no longer a sort of nice to have sustainability on the outside of a company. It's really in the middle of the commercial fabric of the company. So those are some of the things that I think are changing right now.
Yes, it's quite interesting to hear from you, representing a global firm that is at the forefront of these changes. Roy, may we hear from you? You are often emphasizing the fact that we have optimized our food systems for profit and production of calories, and that we also need to optimize them along the lines of nutrition, environmental sustainability, culture, and community. what are the fundamental shifts we need to make, and how much time do we have for these adaptations?
Well, time is running out. I think the fundamental shift has to be with thinking about the food system as a whole, from really a system lens perspective. Because right now, there's a real momentum to look at true cost accounting of the food system. And we've just done an analysis, for example, in the United States, where the food system actually generates about $1 trillion worth of value, but actually creates $2 trillion worth of costs. And so, over half of those costs are actually because of the healthcare system, because our diet is now the #1 risk for early mortality. And the other costs are obviously the environmental, biodiversity, economic costs that are the result of the kinds of systems we have right now. And from an overall societal advantage perspective, from a system perspective, we're not optimized. I mean, if you just take, for example, one dietary disease in the United States, diabetes, that's costing the U.S. $327 billion. If you think about the entire global fertilizer industry of the world right now is only $150 billion. One diet-related disease is taking away twice the value of the entire global fertilizer industry. And so, we've got a food system that's essentially bankrupting the healthcare system. Yet, food is also, we know, is medicine. And we could actually have incredible impact on health if we got the right kinds of diets in place and the right food systems in place. Similarly, with the environmental sustainability and the costs that come from having poorly designed or inadequately designed for environmental sustainability agricultural systems, we have to be thinking from that systems lens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Lou, coming to you, how are the companies like yours, like BlueNalu, responding to these global challenges, and particularly in the challenge of the protein supply that we need for this growing world population? What are the projections for changes to consumer behavior over the next 2 decades that will affect our global protein landscape? And being a businessman, could you provide us with an overview of the number of companies that are working in this area now worldwide, and maybe an estimate of how much funding they have received today and what types of products they are developing? I know it's an area.
No, thanks, Effie. And just to follow up on Sarah and Roy's points, we need to do something dramatically to really affect our protein supply chain on the planet. And I'm excited to share that there is some excitement that's happening. We're now seeing over 100 companies around the world that are focusing on that solution. It all begins with the consumer. Consumer has shifted during the past decade, in particular, towards seeking products that are not just healthy for themselves, but healthy for the planet. So we're seeing companies like BlueNalu that are coming to market with alternatives to conventional protein supply chain sources. And they're accomplishing that using either various types of fermentation technologies, or they're using plant-based ingredient supply chain solutions, or in our case, using cell culturing technologies to actually make products that either look like or are the same as conventional meat, dairy, poultry, and seafood products. It's a very exciting time. Many believe that we are literally at the front end of a global transformation of our protein supply chain, very similar to the way the computer industry was in the 1970s in the United States. And here we are, almost 5 decades later, and still seeing considerable changes in the tech revolution, but we're now seeing that in the food tech revolution. So one of your questions was about projections. There have been some projections that by the year 2040, 35% of our global protein supply chain will be made up of cell culture protein products, 25% by plant-based, where conventional meat, poultry, and seafood will become unconventional by that time, representing 40% market share. So what we're seeing in the case of seafood, which is really reflective of SDG number 14, life below water, is a recognition that the global demand for seafood is an all-time high, and we cannot keep up with that supply chain to feed the planet in the decades ahead. We must find another solution versus wild caught and farm raised. So in the case of cell culturing processes, we could really support that global supply chain gap, and also displace imports around the world, create more food security, but also what Roy mentioned about human health, even provide products that provide benefits with the absence of mercury, microplastics, environmental pollutants, really providing a product that's healthy for people, humane for sea life, and sustainable for the planet. So a lot of excitement in this category.
Certainly exciting, since you're referring to sell cultured seafood and food in general, proteins. I'd like to go back to Sara and explore a bit the hot discussion about climate change. This lies at the heart of many of the challenges we face globally, and Bayer is pioneering new business models related to carbon farming, and is actually working on connecting farmers with carbon trading markets. So how is this work progressing, and what challenges still remain? And if you have a few words on what's happening in Europe right now, that would be very interesting for our audiences, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I think first thing to note is that farmers are facing challenges with climate change in the risk on their farms. You know, we talk about how crops are moving in that they're where they grow, the areas are changing, and the frequency of extreme weather is changing. And Greece knows this as well as anybody, being, you know, the Eastern Mediterranean is such a hot spot in terms of climate change. So agriculture is fundamentally having to shift. Farmers are having more risk, but they're also a part of the problem. We know that the agriculture sector contributes a large percentage of the global greenhouse gases, and that's something that we've been really excited to address at Bayer, and this fits in a bit to Lou's excitement of different models. There's different models of production. There's different call from the markets. There's different policies that are creating these opportunities for new business models. And what has been the challenge is, how can you figure out how to get farmers to change their farming practices in ways that either avoid greenhouse gas emission or sequester carbon in the soil. So that's what we're doing. We started last year in earnest, and this year we will have millions of acres under climate smart practices. But there's a lot of challenges. We're still at the very beginning, honestly, of understanding soil and carbon and root systems, and so we've got a long way to go. It's a very crowded field with lots of innovation in it, which is fantastic. But our bet at Bayer is that if you keep it science-based and focused on the farmer, so that you're understanding from the farmer's perspective what they need, and if you approach it with a collaborative partnership kind of a lens, then that's what's going to crack this space. But it's moving fast. You asked me quickly about Europe. Of course, the Green Deal in Europe is an audacious set of policies heading in the direction of really trying to tackle some of the climate challenges and a lot around the agriculture space that will change the way farming is done in Europe and require just a lot of innovation. And I think that's where we need to be on the cutting edge to make sure that to face these challenges, we're innovating and partnering as fast as we can.
And are there any locations globally or in countries that are leading these changes, that are at the forefront of innovating and using innovation for the benefit of farmers and the environment?
So our carbon farming models cover the US, Brazil, India, Australia, and then we just started a public-private coalition in Europe, which basically looks at these same elements of sort of what does the carbon accounting on the farm level look like, and how can we make it something that is well enough accepted both by the farmer as well as governments for subsidies, or banks for insurance premiums, or consumers for knowing how their food was grown. So it's really global. Every system is super different. In India, we're looking at methane reduction on rice paddies, which is a huge piece of the puzzle. In the US, we're looking at corn and soy and carbon sequestration into the soil.
Fantastic. It's fascinating to be at the forefront of these changes. Roy, let me come back to you. During the recent years, we have been trying to define what quality diet is actually, and the very definition has been very challenging. In your opinion, what do we need to do to advance our understanding of quality diets and implement this knowledge? And I know that at the Rockefeller Food Initiative, you have also the periodic table of food in your agenda, and that's even more fascinating. We would be very interested to hear about all these.
Sure. Well, when it comes to, what is a good diet, everybody's interested in it. But if you read the headlines, you may think no one knows what a good diet is, because there's so many confusing claims out there. People saying this is healthy, and then they change their mind and say it's not healthy. So there's a good reason why people are confused. However, if you actually go to the nutritional literature, there's actually quite a bit of consensus on what a good diet is. About 80–90% consensus. There's differences of opinion on selected issues, but if you ask most nutritionists, diets that are high in fruits and vegetables, seeds, nuts, fruits, whole grains, most diets now are not even close to what they need to be in terms of what we know is healthy. Only 10% of Americans actually eat the adequate quantities of fruits and vegetables. Only 10% of Ethiopians do, and my guess is only 10% of Danish people do. Maybe they're a bit healthier. So we are quite far off of what the science tells us a good diet is, and we're talking about really dietary patterns. Everybody wants to have the miracle pill or the miracle food, and that's not it. It's a pattern that you have to be eating in order to be healthy. The reason why, we can say what's healthy at a population level, the challenge, of course, is we're all different, right? We all have different genetics, different microbiome, and so different people are going to react to foods in different ways. And we are recognizing that we actually don't know as much about food as we thought we did, right? Like most food composition tables in the world measure about 150 biomolecules, vitamins, minerals, starches, proteins, those things. But actually, an average diet has 20,000 biomolecules. We're not measuring, we don't understand 99% of the biomolecules we're putting into our body. We don't measure them and we don't fully understand them. Yet we know they're absolutely essential for good health. They affect our microbiome, they have regulatory functions, all of these, and we're just starting to get glimpses of that, right? And it's a very exciting field to start to understand how the various components of food. It is not simplistic. And so one of the things we're helping with a coalition of people is to create a global database using the latest instruments, mathematics, to really measure in a comparable way the 1,000 foods that feed humanity. We'll start with that, and really measure. We're hoping at least 4,000 biomolecules. So we get a much more robust and nuanced understanding of the foods we're eating. Then, of course, is you still have to guide people to eat this stuff. And as you know, there's been lots of attempts at putting quality star ratings and front of pack labeling, and I have to say, these are all good attempts. All of them have downsides, but I think we have to keep trying, because we are so far off eating what we know is healthy as an overall population, and especially people who are disadvantaged. The other dimension of this, though, is healthy diets aren't necessarily affordable in many places of the world. And that's something that the world has to confront in terms of what kinds of policies we put in place, what kinds of subsidies we provide, and then what kinds of regulations we need to put in place so that we aren't damaging the health. I mean, I think the greatest danger to our food right now is ultra processing. And we have very large interests that want to keep making money out of food that we know is unhealthy. And that you can just see that with the incredible opposition to sugar taxes, which we know work, but there's a lot of companies who suddenly come in and try to kill any attempt at reducing sugar in our foods or taxing sugar in our foods. So I think we've got some challenges. I think there's a lot of interest in this area. We're starting to recognize how important it is, and hopefully we'll start aligning interests so we're actually creating and supporting foods that are healthy for us.
Yes, I mean, there's lots of debate. We've seen what's going on in Europe with the Nutri-Score and how there is a quite, let's say, vivid discussion between producers and of traditional food products and the Nutri-Score rating. Let's see how this goes. Lou, coming back to you. We are witnessing lately a trend of established food companies investing in startups such as BlueNalu. Actually, BlueNalu's investors today include 7 multinational food companies headquartered in the US, Asia, and Europe. So, since Sara just mentioned the value of collaboration and partnership, in what ways do such collaborations create the framework for revolutionizing our food production and consumption models? And how have consumers responded thus far?
I appreciate the question. Clearly, collaboration is critical for our success. When I started the company, I realized that success will be so challenging in this industry. And the company was really founded on scale production, accessibility of our products to consumers around the world. And that's quite a challenge indeed, is particularly when products like ours have historically and have not been approved at the regulatory level anywhere in the world. So Singapore recently approved this, United States, other Asian countries, EU, are all putting together the processes for regulatory guidance in this brand new space. Some categories, there is approval process in place, like plant-based products, but cell cultured and some of the fermentation technologies are requiring new regulatory guidance. So again, back to our partnership model, we really see this as kind of 3 levels. Supply chain, if we want to have consumer accessibility around the world, we need to make sure we could accomplish price parity, or perhaps even better, so our products can be affordable and accessible to all. We can literally democratize, for example, seafood. Take bluefin tuna, for example, overfished, very high levels of mercury, 80% of global catch goes to Japan. What if instead this model went from supply restricted to demand driven? We can make as much bluefin tuna and it could be accessible to all and democratized based on consumer interest, not necessarily based on consumer or supply chain restrictions. So that's really our model. So supply chain and cost of goods partners are really critical. So in our case, Nutreco, one of the largest suppliers of agriculture feed in the world, is a strategic investor in the company, as is Griffith Foods, a US-based company focused on food science and culinary, very critical to our success. And then also operations, sales, marketing, distribution partners are also critical. In our case, that includes Pulmuon from South Korea, Sumitomo from Japan, Thai Union from Thailand, and Rich Products in the United States that have all participated, in addition to Syngenta through Radical Growth initiative of theirs, have participated as well. And we recently announced a joint venture, an MOU, I should say, with both Thai Union and Mitsubishi to really explore the market opportunities in Asia as well. So again, our success will only come through joining hands. In our case of seafood, today we have wild and farm raised. We will now have a third solution, cell cultured, We must really supplement the global supply chain, at a minimum, just to feed the planet in the decades ahead. But we're very excited by having a product, again, that could also have some human health benefits and clearly do a great deal of good to really maintain the biodiversity in our oceans and really reduce the amount of animal suffering and welfare that exists in this industry today.
And how are consumers responding thus far?
Yes, no, we're very excited. What's really interesting about this whole category, there are so many benefits to this. There's food security, there's sustainability, there's nutrition and other benefits of this process and health. But what we've really found when it comes to seafood, we've tested this through consumers, and we found a really high level of interest in our products. The people that enjoy seafood the most and consume it most frequently had the greatest amount of familiarity and awareness with the issues in the seafood supply chain. The words that come out of their mouth are mercury, microplastics in the ocean, some of the devastation to the ocean floors through dredging or nets that occur, animal suffering. So we're hearing all these issues with consumers that really resonate. We've also heard from the food service, the restaurant industry, a benefit that we didn't think we'd hear to such significance. But what we really came to realize is there's such great variability in the supply chain with seafood at the restaurant level. What BlueNalu offers, again, is a product that can be available year-round consistently without the variability in supply and quality and perhaps safety that they're currently experiencing with 100% yield. So our product, we're just making the fillet. We're not making anything living. We're making just the portion that people consume. So what we're doing is we're replacing a product that may come 10,000 miles, say from Southeast Asia to New York City, experiencing perhaps 30 or 40% bycatch, maybe a 60% yield. And the new model is a product with 100% yield that comes from a factory 100 miles away. So it's really redefining local. In the case, it's a bit like vertical farming is, but now if you will, it's vertical seafood production. So it's a similar kind of logic, really bringing food closer to the consumer, and offering year-round availability. So that really resonated with the restaurant industry, as well as the other benefits that clearly include sustainability. So a great deal of interest, and we can't wait to launch.
Amazing. It's very interesting that, let's say, the heavy users of seafood are the ones that have the greatest awareness about the issues in terms of the oceans and all the mercury, microplastics, and all the issues that are at the forefront of the challenge for our seas. Fantastic. We've heard amazing insights. We've heard about digital and sustainability challenges in the ag sector. We heard about the periodic table of food and how we are exploring the thousands of substances that are included in our food. We heard about cell-based seafood and this need to replace the protein production. It has been fascinating. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and powerful insights. And I would like to, let's say, conclude this discussion by inviting you to share with us a short closing remark. Sara, would you like to start, as we did?
Sure. You can just hear the excitement among my colleagues on the panel. It really does feel like a different era, having been in this field for a long time, where the innovation and the commercial markets and the digital advances we're making in data are aligning in a way that can be really pushed forward towards sustainability, both social impact and environmental impact. And I think, I would say there's three legs of the stool. One is this technology and innovation that all three of us are super excited about. You can tell we're sort of innovation geeks. But the second leg of the stool is policy. and nothing that we do happens without a good policy framework that's going to keep driving it. And the third leg, I think, is partnerships. That I also believe that none of what each of us wants to achieve happens without really good, solid partnerships across both public and private sectors.
Fantastic. Lou?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to participate today, Effie. I think just to pick up on Sarah's points, this is all about partnerships. This is really about a global connectivity, holding hands, and it's really exciting to see. Just as BlueNalu got started, it's really been an interesting focus group, if you will. There's the global investors are all talking to each other. There's tremendous interest. You're seeing activity with startups like BlueNalu that are really excited, and we're all beginning space because of what's happening with consumers. So consumers are evolving, entrepreneurs are establishing companies, investors are excited and see this as a very disruptive opportunity to participate and really embrace ESG goals, not just financial, to really have a long-term mission towards supporting companies like ours. And we're even seeing employees that want to join companies with this commitment to social values. So the shift is happening at all levels. It's really exciting, but it's really all about, it can only be accomplished through partnerships. So really encourage everybody to become increasingly aware of this category. It is absolutely on fire. And I really do predict that this will really transform our food landscape in the decades ahead. And it's not too late to jump in and encourage everybody to participate as much as they can.
Fantastic. And Roy?
Thank you. Well, it's been wonderful being here. And I do think that food systems is getting so much more attention, especially now, with the United Nations Food Systems Summit coming up in September. But also this recognition that food systems are really the #1 problem when it comes to two of the most biggest issues facing humanity. Climate change. You can't solve climate change without transforming the food system. And we can't solve the health issue without solving food systems. And in fact, if we had actually healthy populations, COVID would not have the same impact it's having now. But at the same time, food systems are the solution. We can sequester carbon, as Sara mentioned, and actually kind of be solving the problem rather than contributing to it. And food is one of the best medicines possible. I think in the future, we're going to heal our diseases with food. I think we're going to get to that place. And maybe the pharmaceutical companies don't want to hear that, but maybe they should become food companies so that we can really contribute to health. But it really creates, once you start envisioning the possibility, it's extraordinarily exciting. And I think we need to envision what's possible and not only focus on all the challenges, which there are many, and it can be very disheartening and very demotivating. But we can also, and we need to understand that, but we need to create a much more powerful vision of what's possible and what of the world that we want. And I'll leave that there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again for your experience and insights. Congratulations to the Delphi Economic Forum for making this happen, and thank you very much all for attending.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.